you may feel ashamed. Let's put that aside. Let's just deal with making this situation better and tolerable.
Can I keep going with questions?
Yes.
Okay, great. So there's another one. These are just so good, and I think that you can weave in what you wanted to talk about as you do these.
Sure, of
Elizabeth
course.
says, my kid doesn't talk about his emotions much. What are some signs to look out for with a 9-year-old as far as depression is concerned?
It's a great question. So when kids are younger, and actually teens as well, what you may see is aggression, anger, or worry or anxiety manifesting in physical symptoms: skin picking, nail biting, pull hair, like sometimes pulling out hair, things like this, stomach aches, headaches. So what we want to do is get a sense of what these symptoms are, because these symptoms will lead you to getting some assistance. When your 9-year-old is getting angry over and over and almost seems like they're enraged, like they can't control or manage themselves, that's a good sign to you that their system is overwhelmed. They can't modulate. And so I would encourage you to go and meet with your pediatrician or your primary care provider and talk about what's going on, because it feels bad for kids. They've told me this over and over again when they lose control like that. And it's a signal for you as a parent that they can't manage, that there's something they're overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed.
Excellent. And then Kim, I'm going to get to yours in a minute because I think that one's more for me. And same with Sheila. And then Lisa Marie asks, my daughter's anxiety causes great procrastination. We've tried everything, charts, apps on the phones, she's not, quote, into doing her schoolwork until the last minute before it's due. How can I help?
Well, that happens for a lot of kids with ADHD. They can't really do something until they have the heat under them. It's like, oh my God, at last minute, I have to, quickly do it, or the fire's going to get me, or, something. And so there are three, as far as I can determine, there are three types of procrastination. Perfectionism, it has to be perfect or I'm not going to do it. There's avoidance. I hate this. Why bother? I'm going to fail anyway. And there's productive procrastination. I'm going to do other things which, I can consider to be worthwhile. So it doesn't seem like I'm procrastinating, but I'm still not doing that main thing that I have to do. And so one of the things that's most important with procrastination is breaking things down into small pieces. And small, I mean small. Like it might mean putting their name on their paper, taking a break. It might mean answering 2 questions, taking a break. Please work with your child to think about, how long can they work before they get bored or discouraged? How can you help them break things down into small pieces with no shame? We have to take shame and put it away. This is how your brain works, and that's okay.
Excellent. And before I get to Sheila's and Kim's, I'm going to talk a little bit about that one too, because I think that also, Lisa Marie, a really great thing at this time with your daughter experiencing anxiety that leads to more procrastination, is it's really an opportunity to listen and to hear and to hold space, and also to, as you'll see a lot of the speakers talking about, to mirror or to reflect, to use reflective conversations and to sort of say, I notice, that's one of the things so many speakers have said, but I notice your body is doing this when you talk about getting started. I notice your voice tone does this, and really just pausing and getting out of your head and your story about that, oh my gosh, they need to get going on this or it's just going to pile up. It'd be so much easier, and get to what their experience in their body is in the moment and be like, wow, I'm noticing blah, blah, blah. Wow, I'm noticing that you say these words. Wow, I'm noticing that you often will use that same sentence. What's that about? So this default sentence that helps you, that is a story about this. Is this a realistic story? So it's an opportunity to explore sort of the somatic side and the narrative side also, where you're not really even thinking about the homework or the assignment at the time, believe it or not. And I do this all the time with my clients, and I always use the same example, but a kid says, oh, I hate math. And I say, wow, that's a strong word. Let's talk about that. Because if we're trying to say, okay, you got some math work, let's get started on your math, and the kid's like, I hate math, well, then I'm like, I want to explore that before and it seems counterintuitive because there's the urgency of, oh my gosh, this math would only take them 15 minutes and it's due tomorrow. But we need to deal with what's going on underneath the stuff. And then also what Dr. Sharon said about the baby steps and just starting somewhere. Start small. It really is, with me, with getting these kids to get started on something, chunking it down into
Mhm.
small, manageable, bite-sized pieces. And I always say there's two ways of chunking. And this really relates to Kim as well. There are two ways for chunking: by time and by task. So you can use the timer. I'm telling you, the $5 timer, buy a bunch of them, is one of the best investments you can ever get. This stupid little thing, not on their phone, not on the stove, not one that makes the ticky noise that's annoying, just cheap $5 digital timer. But hey, can you work on this? And then I do what's called a false choice. Okay, look, I know you don't want to do this. Can you start this thing for 1, 3, or 5 minutes? You pick. And even if they say 1, and that's not enough, don't think that. Think, we're not trying to get them to do 1 minute. We're trying to get them over the mental
Mhm.
hurdle of starting. And we're trying to
That's
get some,
exactly right. It's like the myth of Sisyphus. The task in front of them feels like this incredible
oh,
boulder that they're pushing
pushing.
up the hill, and we want to make that boulder like a small rock that they can hold. And so I think I love that chunking by time and by task. It's such a great and a concrete intervention.
So let's go to Kim's, then Sheila's. And then they're a little bit off topic from what you were talking about, but we'll see if you have anything to say, and then we'll get on
Sure.
to more about the anxiety and depression and ADHD.
Okay.
How do you get a kid to invest more than the bare minimum in virtual school? So the way that I do that, I don't know how much Dr. Sharon does that, but she'll definitely respond. But
Mhm.
I do work with the kids in the trenches with this situation all the time. So the way I get them to invest more than the bare minimum is by exactly what we said, chunking it down. And I have the joke, hey, can you write this essay? No. Can you write a page? No. Can you write a paragraph? No. Can you write a sentence? No. Can you write a word? No. Can you write a letter? No. Can you write a dot? Yes. Okay, we'll start there. That's scaffolding. And so much of this with these kids is a mental game, that in here is where the resistance is. This is where they feel so overwhelmed by the gravity of the task that their nervous system is saying to them, this is threatening and unsafe. So you got to understand they're having an experience in their nervous system. So we are working with them eventually to learn their own tools to do this themselves. But what you are looking for, Kim, is to invest more than the bare minimum. You're looking to invest a millimeter more than the bare minimum, and then another millimeter more than the bare minimum. So keeping the expectations really real, and then rewarding the heck out of effort. Oh my gosh, you just put your
That's
name on it.
right. You got it.
This may sound silly, but that's awesome that you put your name on it. Oh my gosh, you just read the directions. Wow, you just did 2. And I thought, and you said you're only going to do 1. I'm so proud of you. You want to try 1 more? Like, I'm always
Mhm.
getting them to do a baby step, and then I am pushing them after that. So I do want to push their comfort zone, parents. Okay. So this is how I describe it. This is their comfort zone. I'm always pushing their comfort zone, but this is
Mhm.
their threshold. If I go beyond their threshold, they're not going to want to work with Seth. They're not going to want to talk to you. So it's sometimes a very small place that we're dancing in, but that's where the magic is. So I'm pushing, and then this expands in time.
Mhm.
It's just not in your timetable or my timetable. It's whatever time. So what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm thinking that, the important thing, one of the most important things, these are two really important things. One is whose timetable. That one of the things that's really hard right now is that online learning really does not suit many learners, and particularly alternative learners, kids who have ADHD, kids who have learning differences, kids who are high functioning autism. Some of them can do virtual learning and some of them can't. And so bare minimum learning might be actually a lot for them. And so I love the idea that you're going to push them a little bit above their comfort zone. So we're going to do bare minimum plus 1. We're not going to try to get to, medium minimum. We're just going to do bare minimum plus 1. And that might be a place where that child feels comfortable. I think the other thing that you said is so important is we have to acknowledge the emotional component of this, and whether it's anxiety or depression or frustration or sometimes despair. these emotions, and particularly for kids with ADHD who struggle often with working memory, which is directly affected by emotional control and related, they're going to have a harder time harnessing what they know and applying it in the current moment. And so we want to deal with that affect. We don't want to do like, we don't ask why questions like, well, why do you hate math? But we might want to ask what questions. What do you hate about math? How do you hate math? Try to get some understanding, flesh it out a little bit.
Awesome. I am getting the comments before they vanish. I hope I didn't miss anybody. So let me pop this in here. The other thing I have to say to Kim and anybody is, now this is really important. Two more things. One is advocate. So the schools need to be here. I mean, they know how hard this is, but to say over and over, hey, that, this is not working for us. Our kid is not engaging in what we're doing. What can we do? I don't want my kid to fail this class because they're not doing, we can't, it's not that my kid, it doesn't want to learn in life and doesn't want to engage. We just, this is not working. I don't want my kid to fail. Like, that's a concern I have I think the teachers aren't going to do that, but it's just like, if they don't jump through the hoops in a traditional semester,
Right.
They would fail. And this is so crazy. And the other thing I want to say, parents, is very important. You are not cheating. This is not bad if you are taking things off their plate. Yes, there is such a thing as enabling. Yes, there is such a thing as dysfunctional things that are not helping your child. But that is not what I'm talking about. You taking things off their plate, like scanning through the assignments, scanning through the portals, if you have time, and you guys have a life too, but depending on the age and maturity and executive function of your kid, if you are doing a lot of those things for them so that they can focus on this, hopefully, ideally, to be able to focus on the learning and the educational experiences, that is fine. And then you do want to inch by inch, millimeter by millimeter, obviously, to hand over the reins to them throughout the semester. But it's so overwhelming for them to be able to even figure out what the heck's going on, to organize their papers or to go through their inbox. So there are a lot of things that you can do to support them so that their bare minimum. And I will tell you, Kim, if I'm doing these things for my clients, I do make them aware of it. So I'll be like, hey, would it be helpful if I went through your inbox for you and I literally deleted everything for you or got, and responded for you? Would that be helpful? Would it be helpful if I figured out what the work was so you don't have to spend like, I make sure that they know that, that I'm doing something for them. And then I say, okay, I'm going to expect you to start taking over more of this, but I'll do it today or whatever.
Seth, it would be really helpful for me if you could go through my inbox. That would be
right.
But I think that's so important, because what we want to do is we want to model how to narrow the field for our kids, but we also want to model for them how to advocate for themselves. And right now, schools are overwhelmed, school districts are overwhelmed. And so sometimes parents may feel like they're not getting the response from the district that they should, or people aren't really taking them seriously. And what I want to say is, when you get to the end of your rope, make a knot and hold on. And this is the time to make that knot and hold on. Advocate, advocate, advocate. It will make all the difference for your child. I work with several kids who have a learning specialist or some sort of support at school, and sometimes they meet with this person every day, for that kind of class, and sometimes it's every other day. But that support, being able to be with that person, has made them much more successful in navigating online learning.
All right. Where do we go from here? I think I'm going to try to get to the ones that I was promising before. Sheila asked, best way for a teenager to map out her day for online learning. So I'll cover that one real quick. So I could really talk about this for a half hour, and I do have some recent YouTube videos about that. They're in depth. Please watch them because I can't go into depth. But my gist on this is visual, 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 and auditory. Timers visual calendars on the wall with colors, ideally with buy-in and ownership and participation collaboratively with your child. Um, and um, and you can use magnets, you can use popsicle sticks, you can use paper, construction paper, computer paper if it's a older kid, and but visual, posted on the wall, not somewhere in a pile. Visual, easy to see. Whiteboards, um, be creative, but visual. So that's my main takeaway, and you can get the details online.
One thing I want to say about that is that kids themselves have what I call self-smart organizational systems. Like, they can help you create that visual map. Some kids will want to do colors. Some kids will want to do, numbers or pictures or whatever. Sometimes kids like to participate in making these things, and it actually helps them feel like they're taking some of their power back, that they're able to assist. So try to do it if you can with them, not just for them.
All right. So that next one, I think, okay, so that was, Lisa Marie's we covered before. And I'm sorry, people, if I got out of order as I cut and pasted this. I just didn't want to lose them the way that this works from my end. It's kind of a nightmare. It only shows 4 comments at a time. Okay. I love this one. Amy says, so vulnerable, Amy. I am also a very negative thinker, which is rubbing off on my 7-year-old. So, Amy, I would say that I was a very negative thinker, and I would say that I'm a very positive thinker now. And I would say that I have times where I'm a very negative thinker. So and I've learned to be like, okay, I can be this and this. So I am, on the one hand, a man of faith who meditates and prays and sets intentions, whatever you call it. I don't care. I don't know what God is or who God is, but all I know is that I believe in something, and something seems to happen when I do these things. So, but I'm also at the same time a skeptic and an agnostic. It's so, and I've been like, you know what? I'm human. These are just thoughts. But when I was depressed, when I was a young man, and I had probably 12 or 13 was when my depression started. And I don't talk much about the depths of it because it's part of my personal life, and I don't put everything about me on YouTube and stuff. But I realized when I got out of that hole, when I was 22, maybe, that, that I worked very hard to be depressed. I practiced those thoughts and defaults and emotions. And when I say defaults, I mean the narrative and the story that I defaulted to. I practiced them for years. My victimhood, my nothing goes my way, all that stuff. I worked very hard, but I didn't think of it as practicing. So in changing that, part of that for me was practicing different mindsets. And I'm not good at that because I forget. I'm inspired. I'm like, oh, that's the best thing in the world. Oh, I'm going to take on that attitude. I love that. Next thing you know, 5 minutes later, someone cuts me off and I'm flipping them off and I hate them. And then I'm beating myself up for being such a jerk and so judgmental. It's like, so what helped is that and even in my life today, if you saw my home, you would see all these signs in my car and all these reminders of, even in my shower, I have reminders of the attitudes that I want to take. So I spend a lot of time meditating and setting intentions and stuff. And then the other thing that helped me is service. Doing things for other people is one of the best ways to get out of my negative mindset. Find people, call people and be like, how are you doing? And don't say a word about myself. Every time they're like, how are you? I'm like, nope, I want to know about you. Tell me more. And then also therapy, self-development books, journaling, anything like that. These things work, and it takes time, but they work.
I think it's very brave of you to say, I do this and I see this rubbing off on my child. We want to, we hope that we impart the best parts of ourselves to our kids and not some of the things that we're not super proud of. And yet kids pick up everything. And so, I think Seth's absolutely right, that when you have some negativity, that becomes something, you practice it, you're living in it more, it becomes stronger than the positivity. So how are we going to shift that ratio? Dr. Barbara Fredrickson wrote a book called Positivity, and she said that we want want to have 3 positives for every negative. And when I actually travel and I talk to people who live with ADHD, and particularly kids, I'll say, well, what do you think the ratio is? And sometimes kids say it's 1 to 15. Sometimes it's 1 to 30 when they combine what they say to themselves and what other people say to them. So there are some concrete things that you can do. There's been research that shows if you, at the end of each day, can just write down in a journal 3 things that went well. And it doesn't have to be big things. It can be really liked how my hair looked, or made a nice salad dressing, or had a great moment reading a story with my child. That's all I'm talking about. It can also be big things. And the other thing that you could do is to try at dinner to do something, a little bit corny, but I think it works, which is go around and say a high and a low, or sometimes it's a rose and a thorn. And so you're starting to pay attention, you're shifting. And if you are picking up your kid, or they're going to school or they're not, when kids are stuck in this negative loop, one of the things I recommend is when you get in the car or you first see them, you ask them, tell me a couple things, 3 things that went well today. And so we're automatically shifting the conversation away from what was bad about the day to what actually worked and made your child feel good. And I think that sets up a different kind of dynamic. So I would encourage you to try any or all of those things.
Kay says, anxiety around school makes it super difficult for our son to attend, participate, and complete assignments. Stems from 2 years of trauma from teachers who pushes so hard and deliver messages of inadequacy and failure. One teacher went so far to write on his paper, "Did you even try?" Of course he tried. All passion as a learner has been extinguished.
I don't know. You want me to try this? Go first here?
Either way, I'm ready because I've seen this so many times.
Go ahead. I'll follow up.
First of all, if a teacher ever says that, I would email the teacher, the admin, and the counselor, and CC them all and say, please don't ever say that again. And then I would say exactly what you said here. I would cut and paste what you just told us. Anxiety around school makes it super difficult for a son to attend, participate, and complete assignments. We've had some trauma that have pushed that my child feels, and I wouldn't say from teachers. I would just say we've had some trauma, and they don't need to know what the details are. I would just want them to stop. And I want that principal and that counselor to go up to them and be like, what's up with that, dude? Like, you can't be saying that. Like, that teacher is probably doing what they think is best, but it's not, because they don't get it. And the only way they're going to get it is by being educated. And in this case, you're not going to do it. So you need to, hopefully there's a compassionate counselor and admin that can be like, what the hell are you doing? Like, let me help you be a better teacher with this stuff. Do you understand executive function? So that's where my mind went on this. First of all, is just the advocate, and just you got to put it right back to them, and like immediately.
Absolutely. I agree completely. I don't think I have much to add. I think one thing that I would try to work on is to help to maybe make a list and sit down with your son, and make a list of some times when he overcame some difficulties, and how was he able to overcome some of those obstacles, and write those down. I did something small to get started. I did the subject that I like best first, and write some of those things down. Put them up on the fridge, put them in his room, so you can see them, he can refer to them when the next incident, derails him. One of the things about, as I said earlier, anxiety creates amnesia for our successes, for the ways that we've triumphed. And if we want to build resilience, which we do for anxious kids, it helps us to be able to remember, to have a visual cue of when we had succeeded.
And I think a visual gratitude list of good teachers and good experiences. And then in this type of a family too, I would be talking to the admin at the beginning of every year and being like, look, we had some experiences. Look, I need you to put my kid in a class with a teacher who really gets kids, and push for that like the most freaking squeaky wheel you can ever be. Because what is going to help your kiddo is having teachers who love them, who invest in them, who adore them, who see their strengths, and it's a crapshoot. So to make the odds in your favor in this crapshoot better, advocate at the beginning of the year say, hey, we need to get, a really fun, compassionate teacher, and persist, like write that email like 5 times to the principal, say, are you on it? Are you on it? Are you with us here? So that's not going to guarantee you anything. And then the other thing is really when your child is telling you about how hard these things are, don't, in my opinion, don't try to change that and say, oh, don't feel that way. Oh, you're great. Oh, forget that, teacher, or forget that. But be like, wow, I hear you. Wow, that sounds really hard. Like, what can I do to be helpful? Rather than trying to fix. What do you think about that, Sharon?
I think that's really important. That's that's one of the fundamentals of the 5 C's, compassion. We want to meet kids where they are. And if your child is having a hard time, we don't want to minimize it. We want to say, I hear this, I see this, I understand why this could be difficult. What kids really want first is to be met. Then you can solve problems. But if they don't feel like they're understood, they're not really going to cooperate or listen or feel safe. And safety is a big issue for a lot of these kids because they've experienced a lot of trauma, the 1,000 little paper cuts of every day, and sometimes huge bigger cuts, when a teacher says something like that. It is traumatizing. It creates complex trauma. And we have to, one of the treatment modalities for that is first acknowledging, recognizing.
I'm totally stealing this. Donna says, name a happy and crappy.
Happy and crappy.
I do high lows and temperature checks.
I love that too. Happy and crappy.
The happy and crappy. Amy says, I've also had very bad anxiety, so I'm feeling I'm causing my son anxiety. So, and we already responded to Amy's, but I do have one more thing that I had wanted to mention to that, on that. You are, and that's not an accusatory thing, but we co-regulate, we attune. Our nervous systems are always talking. Mm-hmm. So we are modeling for our kids. But the beautiful thing about that, Amy, is there's no value in beating yourself up over that. It's an opportunity for you to learn to work with yours. It's going to be a long road. If you know my story, I was in a coma in 2000 with ARDS, which is what people are dying of right now. So I had a little anxiety attack the other day because the smoke in Colorado coming from the mountains. And I thought I had COVID-19, and I do not want to be in a coma again. I almost died for 9 days, and I'm very lucky to be here. No joke. But I had panic attacks for 3 years after that. And I got a therapist who taught me Vipassana meditation, mindfulness, EMDR, brain spotting, and things that I can't explain in this video, but that really changed it. So I'm telling you this, Amy, because the nervous system can change. Yours can. And as you are working on yours, whether it's with a great therapist, and I love somatic therapists, by the way, whether it's with meditation, whether it's with YouTube videos of people who inspire you. There's someone named Jennifer Delaney, who has some YouTube videos, but an amazing little blog. Very, she's from here, but very, someone I know, but it's not a famous or big blog, but it is brilliant for you, I think. But the more when you start shifting this stuff, you don't even have to tell your child you're doing it. Your nervous system, and Sharon will back me up on this, as your nervous system starts to shift, even very in small ways, and you're getting more regulation, and the anxiety is being less often. It's not going away, but as it's less frequent and less intense. Two things: less frequency, less intensity is what we're going for here, millimeters. Your kid's nervous system will notice. And that modeling will help your kid learn tools to work with difficult emotions for the rest of their life. So it's an opportunity.
Absolutely true. And I think that sometimes we want to get rid of anxiety altogether, but we're wired as human beings to have anxiety. And that's how we have survived. We want to learn how to turn the volume down. And here's the thing that I want to say to this person, to Amy, I think it is, why not join with your child and say, I do this sometimes too. Let's work on it together. How could we remind each other? What could we do that would support each other? Kids want to help their parents just as much as you want to help them. And it also normalizes their experience if they can have you verbalize, I'm struggling with this a little bit too. And so, that could be something that you're doing as a family. And that kind of helps kids relax into it rather than what is wrong with me.
I love that you use the word normalize. That's an important word. There are things that get normalized that are not good in society, but this is a place where normalizing this is that we have feelings and emotions and work through them. That is very healthy. Ali Sar says she's in a much better school now with services, but I'm concerned about how, quote, small her world has become. She used to do these amazing creative projects and enjoy it so much. First of all, you should be concerned. What is going on right now in the world with all of this stuff is concerning, because this is a crazy time. It is we have a collective trauma going on around the world that is impacting our kids and ourselves negatively. I do not want to downplay that. This is real. This is impacting me. It's impacting Dr. Sharon. It's impacting our sense of safety. I even saw an article today that it's impacting dogs, that dogs are picking up on it. So you should be concerned, and it's a real concern. So I just want you to feel heard. But obviously how we work with that concern is the important thing. So we want to work with that as positively as possible. But with the creative projects, I'm really glad you said that. So for all the parents watching, whatever happens in school, the more your kid is not doing, in my opinion, the more your kid is not glued to electronics all the time, and they are doing creative projects in interest areas, passion areas, and that, I know you're going to say, my kid doesn't have any passions, or they say they don't. Yeah, they have interests though. They have curiosities. Just little projects. Those projects could be, I have an 8-year-old niece, and I sent her 2 birthday gifts on July 4th when her birthday was this year. And one of them was kind of a normal gift for a young girl, and the other one was a big bag of steel cut oats. And they're in Florida and I'm in Colorado, and I taught her on Zoom how to make steel cut oats, and how I'm a fan of steel cut oats, and how you can add so many crazy things to them. So she's loving steel cut oats. And so that may not seem like learning, but there's so much learning that it can happen in so many ways. So keep doing as much of those types of things as you can.
That's amazing. That's an amazing present. And that's an amazing present because what you did was you gave her, it's like, in the Bible, you taught her to fish. And not only that, you shared an experience with her, which she'll remember when all this horribleness is over. She'll be like, oh,
my
remember
uncle got me steel cut oats for my birthday.
Remember when we made steel cut oats, on Zoom? And so I think that what's important is that kids do have interests and they are curious. And one of the things that we can do, if we could shift anxiety to curiosity, it would take some of that negative expectancy off the plate. So instead of I'm worried about, could it be I wonder about? So what do your kids actually wonder about? What are some creative projects that your daughter did that she may feel like are too hard for her right now? Is there one thing, one small step, like we talked about earlier, that she could take right now?
And somebody asked in the comments, we're going to wrap up in a minute. I have 4 more questions, but somebody asked in the questions, it was less frequency and less intensity was the word that I used. I couldn't type it in the comments. It messed up. Less frequency and less intensity was the word that I used. And I did a YouTube video within the last couple months about what if and anxiety. So see if you can find them. It's called like the most important question with anxiety. So that was really in depth, and that will help you too. Okay. So here's what we got, Sharon. We got, my daughter struggled with wanting everything to be perfect. This is for you. Vivian says, my daughter struggled with wanting everything to be perfect and waste so much time trying to figure out how to do it, and panicked over being timed.
So, when kids want something to be perfect, we have to sort of ask ourselves, what's the inverse of that, right? So what would happen if it's not perfect? What is she afraid of when things aren't perfect? Usually what they're afraid of is not getting it right and feeling like a failure, feeling humiliated, feeling bad about themselves. And so we have to kind of adjust our standards and our expectations. So, maybe there are some things that your daughter can get perfect, and maybe there are some things that are good enough. And so if we can separate out what are some things that come easy to you, that those are things that you might have that perfection expectation, and what are some things that are more challenging, and maybe the expectation is it's going to be good enough. We want to help kids stop putting that kind of pressure on themselves. A lot of times kids want to do it perfectly because they don't want to deal with the negative feedback that they're expecting they're going to receive, because that kind of gets into this loop of I'm not okay. And so we want to teach kids that you can mess up and be okay. That's what a growth mindset is, right?
And a lot of what I do with especially my middle and high schoolers that are super resistant, and that's so what you said, Dr. Sharon, is so true. Like they've had a lot of experiences where it just never feels like it's enough.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes I will email teachers as the coach, and I'll be like, dude, listen, you stop ripping this stuff apart, like compliment them on some stuff. Like I will call them on it and be like, this kid wants to feel good about stuff in your class, and they feel like, so sometimes I'll do that, take that on myself.
Good for you.
Yeah. And I forgot what the second thing I was going to say was.
Well, you were saying that when kids have this sort of like, it's not good enough, you're going to call the teacher.
So sometimes I'll email the teacher and tell them that. But the other thing that I do with the kid is, and this is big for all of you, so listen carefully to this one. I teach them how to turn it in half-assed. Excuse my language for those of you that are offended by that term. I teach them how to turn it in half-assed. Look, if a kid worked really hard to get 50% of a thing done, I'm just like, dude, we're done. Or yeah,
right,
whatever, girl, young woman,
right, exactly,
whoever I'm working with. But I'm like, hey, we're done. Let's be done with this. Just turn it in. Now we're going to work on turning it in. So we're not even going to work on the work anymore, but turning it in. Now, of course, online is very different, but these are the kids that often do 80 or 90%, and they do it fairly well, but they can't finish it perfectly. They're exhausted by it. They're done. And then they don't turn it at all and get a 0. And then we're trying to get them, credit later in the semester once the teacher catches up on grades and all this crap. So, you know what? Tell them when you see that threshold I was talking about before, and they're hitting their threshold, stop them before they stop themselves, or stop themselves with anger or withdrawal or whatever, and be like, hey, you know what? I noticed this is happening in your body. What do you say we stop?
That's so
and then turn it in, and then email that teacher and be like, look, seriously, you better give my kid credit for this, because if you send something that says this is crap, then you're going to lose my kid in your relationship with them. And don't assume the worst of teachers. A lot of teachers are great, but just be like, hey, look, my kid worked really hard on this. It may not seem like it, but they did. Please use positivity, because that will encourage them next time.
The one thing I want to say about that, which is so great, is that one of the things with anxiety that I do with my clients, is particularly perfectionistic clients, is I'll say, okay, so let's go through this worry that you have. Let's go all the way through to its end. So, well, let's say you turn it in and it's not exactly perfect. Then what? And then what? And then what? And usually what we get to is this illogical ending, then I'm going to fail and I'm never going to go to college and I'll be a complete loser. And, even as kids say that, they'll start laughing because it doesn't make any sense. What we want to do is to be able to actually turn something in that's 80%, and that 80% is pretty good. That's how we learn, right? That is how we learn.
And unfortunately, some teachers will do default to giving it back to them and saying incomplete. And that's, if it's that type of teacher, you do want to advocate and be like, you're getting 80%. Sorry. All right. So, so we got 2 more. So one is from Melissa. So sorry, everybody, we're going to do 2 more. Oh, and I'm going to do a shameless plug. If you haven't bought TFOS, it's $99 until Tuesday at midnight. It is just, we really made something that is so worth it that I really hope you take a look at the buy page, see if you want it.
It's fabulous. It's fabulous.
I'm getting a lot of people saying in like the YouTube comment or Facebook comments and stuff that this is one of the best things that they've seen, that they've done a lot of summits, and that this one is Great. And technologically, it's not the best. Polished video and audio is not the best, blah, blah, blah. But heart, we got you there.
And good for you, growth mindsets. Like it's fabulous. It's great. It's beyond good enough.
It's what I value and I wanted to put into the world, which is this.
Yeah.
How do we get school? When Melissa says, how do we get the schools to accept the needs for skills? Well, you got a difficult task there. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
So the reality is that we're not going to change anything right now with any systems, but you do not give up on being the squeaky wheel, being collaborative and cooperative, that you're on the same team. Look at how I structure advocacy emails. Look on my blog for the word advocacy, or on my YouTube channel and watch that. But it's like, hey, what's up? We're all on the same team. Thanks for everything you do for my kid, but we need this.
Exactly.
And you can send them my article on executive function. Hey, look, I really appreciate what you're doing. I really want you to have and I wouldn't say you don't get my kid. I would say I really want you to have a better understanding of my kid. And here's a great article about executive function. And I have that one on executive function. Send them that link or whatever, or send them, some Jessica McCabe's stuff if she was one of our other speakers or whatever. But just do it where you're going to be heard. Put yourself in their shoes. They probably are trying. Most teachers are working their butts off right now, and they're at a loss. So you're not going to get the school to accept it. You're going to get the teacher, hopefully, to accept it somewhat and learn a little bit. And, and get someone on your team there, meaning like if you connect with a counselor there or another teacher, try to get that person to, CC that person all the time. The person who you're worrying about, they either don't know about the stuff just because they haven't learned it, or they don't know because they're a jerk. That's really your options. And there are a few teachers that really just, they have their favorites and blah, blah, they're just dysfunctional people. So I'm not going to act like that doesn't happen, but that is not the majority of teachers. Most teachers are really amazing human beings who are doing their best. They want to know. So approach them all and assume positive intent. Always assume positive intent and ask for what you need. Is that what, did I come across wrong, Sharon?
No, I think that's really great. And I also have on my website a lot of free resources about different, all executive functioning skills. And I've been training teachers for many years on ADHD, on ASD, learning disabilities, and other, other learning challenges, emotional challenges. And I think the thing that we want to remember is that teachers may think they understand it, but they really don't. And so don't be afraid to ask and say, look, what do you do? Ask a question to a principal, like, how are you training your teachers about executive functioning skills? Can we bring someone in through the PTO that will talk about executive functioning skills? If you are in counseling or you have an executive or executive functioning coach for your child, have that person be part of the team that's advocating for the plan for your child. Invite them into the meeting. It makes a difference. When I go into meetings for my clients, the head of the special ed department comes to the meeting, and then we get what we need. And I've had sometimes to challenge psychologists, right? To the nth degree. I mean, I've got the bone in my mouth. And until people can get what they want. And sometimes it's hard for parents to do that. So don't be afraid yourself to loop in some help. And that might even be your pediatrician or primary care provider. That's part of they're willing to do that.
Yeah. That's what I do too in those meetings. I'm like, I'll be the jerk.
Right.
But it's sometimes the parents, you guys might not feel like you have all the lingo and stuff, and you don't. If you're not a teacher, this isn't your area, and it can feel very intimidating when you're at a table like a IEP or 504 meeting with 10 people around the table, and everybody seems to have a language vocabulary that you don't with the school stuff. So you need a default, and I think that default is something very simple like this. I hear you, but something still feels wrong. So you don't have to use that sentence, but that's a great one. Just something like that before you go in there, just have a little flashcard with a sentence on it that you can refer to, that when you start to feel that something's off and you're not feeling heard with the attachment theory stuff, that
Mhm.
you have a little sentence to say, and say it 50 times if you need to. But
I love that idea. I think also one way that you can buy time in those meetings is to basically do reflective listening, to say, okay, what I heard you say is this, and then you repeat it to make sure, and then you repeat it, and then they can say, yes, that's what I said, or no, I didn't, just to make sure that you're getting it. Take notes, and in these meetings, you know, don't be afraid to ask for more time. You don't have to agree to anything in a meeting. You can wait and reflect on it. And so that's important, particularly because a lot of, 57% of adults who have ADHD have one child with ADHD, and 33% have a second child with ADHD. And so, I mean, if you have one child with ADHD, there's a 33% chance you'll have a second child with ADHD. And so a lot of times, or if you have a learning disability, those can be neurological conditions, it can be inherited. You as a parent are coming into a meeting with your invisible backpack of your school experiences. And so Seth's absolutely right that you can be intimidated, and you're going to have emotional stuff triggered for you that may make it hard for you to advocate in the best way that you know in that moment. So take the time that you need and ask for time. Say, well, this all sounds good. I want to think about it.
so Sharon and I don't know each other very well. And Sharon, I just want to tell you that this particular call right here has been really good with you, because I'm like, oh my gosh, she knows so much stuff from so many different angles. So I don't know all of Sharon's backgrounds and skills, but it's super cool that I'm like, wow, she is. I mean, I know that she's good at what she does, but I'm like, she's really got a lot of, uh, obviously, a ton of experience with
Thank you.
a lot of good angles. Yeah. Yeah. All
And
right.
I say it's a mutual admiration society, because I love the specifics that you give parents from the heart, but also from the head. The ways that you say, frequency and intensity, and the ways that you break things down. You just offer so much, really just wise help and insight for these families. Thank you.
Thanks. I think really all the speakers are, you can underestimate them. And it's like, these people are legit. And meanwhile, one ask I have for you is to take the executivefunctionsummit.com homepage and share it in your groups right now. Snag it, open the tab, get it ready, share it, because we have today, day 3, then we have Monday and Tuesday as bonus days, where you
Ooh.
can watch anybody in any order from the whole thing. So I am really putting a lot out there, and some people are like watching 1 or 2 and getting a ton of it. Please share it. I'm asking. That's my ask for today. Last one. You ready? Here we go. Lucy, I am replacing why question with what is the reason, but the answer is, and this gets really good, Dr. Sharon. The answer is I don't know. Where do I go from here? I love that one. Do you want to attack that first?
You know what? The answer is they don't know. They don't know. And that's okay. And I think the first part of the conversation is like, it's okay not to know. Let's say you don't know. What's next? What don't you know about? What part of this? A lot of times kids don't know, but they also might need a little more time in the conversation to let it wash over them. And so that is that you could say something like, it's okay that you don't know. Take a minute and really reflect on just this word or that word. Give them a chance. How about for you, Seth?
Yeah, and so much of that they don't know is that they don't know. But sometimes when they say they don't know, it means I really don't know what you're asking for here. I really don't want to think about it. This is not fun. I want to go play video games. Why are you bugging me? So that's a different situation. And in that
Right.
situation, you really want to work on the communication. And what that means is that is making your child feel heard, seen, known, understood. And that starts with baby steps. So if your kid, and it might be a lot of things, it might also be a verbal processing issue. Like they may not be very verbal and articulate in those things. But and I've worked with probably thousands of students.
Mhm.
And when I get kids that default to that, a lot of times they're introverts. slash shy. And I'm not going to go into defining introverts and shyness and the difference and blah, blah, blah. But just for the sake of this conversation, a lot of times I get kids that would be labeled as introverts or shy.
Mhm.
I am an extrovert. I can be intense and stuff like that. And so I have a very big personality. Well, if like when I was a third grade teacher, if I have a little third grader who's very quiet and I have this giant personality and I say, well, hey, what's going on with such and such? And they're like, I don't know what the hell you're talking about, Seth. They don't say that. They just go,
Right.
please leave me alone. I feel pressure. And that's what we want to do is make it so that we can say, hey, I really want to know about such and such. I'm going to be over there for a little while and I'm going to come back and ask you. And you can say, I don't know. Or you
Mhm.
can answer the thing, but I really want to know what you think about such and such. But whatever the age or the personality type, the point is we have to make it like a ramp
Mhm.
that that is at the appropriate angle for the situation.
Mhm.
So they have to be able to climb up the ramp to get to the conversation to give us what we're asking for in an easy way. If we make it like this, it's just like we have to meet them where they're at. And that is a craft, especially for a parent when in our family dynamics, they're often reactive and unconscious. So it's even more of a craft, but you got this, you can do this. But think creatively, how do I give them spaciousness? And I want you to, if you're going to write something down, Lucy, write down spaciousness. How do I give them spaciousness in the conversation to process and come up with a response? Because you do need information from your child, if I'm understanding correctly, to be able to help them. And the I don't know is not giving you anything. And you're like, I'm trying to help you, but you're not giving me anything. So that spaciousness is what you're going to need to do so that they can feel emotionally safe to process and then to respond. And then they need to be heard. So, and then this last thing I'm going to say, I'm going to shut up. When they want to be heard, or they're willing, I shouldn't say want to, when they're willing to try to be heard by you,
Mhm.
your job, and I'm not calling Lucy out, this is for me, Sharon, everybody, our job, this is for our spouses, our boyfriends, girlfriends, friends, this is for the person who we're frustrated with at the store. Our job is to hold space so that they can feel heard, so that they can really say it. So what we want to do at that time is when they are telling us, we don't want to respond right away. So that's the problem. Parents often, the kid will say the thing, finally, they're vulnerable enough to say the thing. And then you say, well, what about blah, 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 or you shouldn't think that way, or blah, blah, or we fix it, or we rescue, or we use logic or reason or whatever. That at that moment, that's your key moment to not do that and hit your pause button in your brain and go, tell me more, I'm listening. Or just give an awkward silence that says, tell me more, I'm listening. And then when they're done with the second round, say, tell me more, I'm still listening.
Mhm.
And then go back later and say, hey, and the next day, say, hey, in 5 minutes, I'm going to come ask you more about that. And I'm not going to say a word, you just talk. And then say, tell me more, I'm listening. I'm telling you, parents, that is where the magic happens. That is where, and I'm sure with Dr. Sharon too, that the way that we get people to be vulnerable and open up to us is by zipping it.
It's so true, you know. I mean, I've seen this a million times in session where I'll ask a question to a client and they're thinking about it. And I have to sit with them not knowing the answer. And they'll say, I don't know. And I'll say exactly that. Well, we have time. Think about it. Tell me more. I'm
You've made
listening.
the spaciousness.
I'm here. We have no rush. And if I shut up, there something will bubble up, something. And I think that it's really important to be available for whatever bubbles up and not to judge it, but again, to use some reflective listening and say, okay, so what I hear you say is this. Did I get that right? Because then you offer the child a chance to expand on whatever it is they said. You know, a lot of times kids with ADHD or kids who have learning differences or kids who are HFA or 2E or, you know, these kids, they process differently. than you might process. And so whether it's working memory or processing speed issue, they just might need some time. And if you add emotion into whatever it is you're dealing with, they're going to need extra time for that too, because emotion affects working memory and processing speed.
All right, let's wrap it up. We have a nice way of wrapping up here, which I'll get to in a minute. I have one ask for you today. That is to share the homepage, executivefunctionsummit.com right now. Grab the link, share it in your Facebook groups with parents. Please share it with someone who might benefit. That's my only ask. The second thing is that we're going to have this nice way of wrapping up, and I'm going to share my wish for you, and then Dr. Sharon will share hers. My wish for you today is what it usually is, but is that you have time for self-care, time for connection with yourself and your family and your loved ones, and that you laugh with your child today and don't talk about anything heavy while you're laughing. Let those joyous experiences marinate. Just have some moments of laughter and joy.
That's beautiful.
What's your wish?
My wish is actually kind of similar. My wish is that you meet your kids where they are and you meet yourself where you are, that you accept where things are, and you try to zoom out and get some perspective and realize that this is just this moment in this day. There is more to come, and I agree. I couldn't wish for more laughter for people's lives right now.